This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So you want to be a wedding photographer, so you start looking things up on YouTube, on Instagram, and you've noticed that most wedding photographers use two cameras and you're wondering why. Let's talk about it. Using two cameras on a wedding day is one of the most important things you can do for yourself as a wedding photographer. It isn't necessary, but let's talk about my approach and why most wedding photographers are using two cameras. Now, the first main reason is having a backup camera. Having a backup camera is probably the most important thing you can do as a wedding photographer, even if you are just using a single camera and a zoom lens. Wedding days can be super hectic, so you never know what's going to happen. And on top of that, cameras just fail sometimes. Between guests possibly breaking your camera by accident, you having an accident, falling and breaking your camera, or just the camera giving out on you, there's so many reasons why your camera can just stop working and why you need a backup. Now, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, well, John, why don't I just bring an extra camera in another bag? And you can do that. However, keep in mind, wedding days move very quickly, and we never know when our camera can give out on us. If you're in the middle of the ceremony, the first kiss is about to come up, and your extra camera's in a bag somewhere else, you can't run to go get it. And especially if you're working that wedding by yourself, you're kind of SOL. And this is why you see a lot of wedding photographers carrying two cameras on them. If for some reason during the day one of my camera just gives out on me, I have another camera literally right there that I can just grab. I can also go back to a bag and get something, but like I was saying in my scenario, if it's the ceremony and the first kiss is coming up and you need to do something quick, going back to your bag to grab your extra camera is not an option. So shooting with two cameras, in my opinion, is the best approach. You can bring one in a bag, and honestly, you probably should bring an extra one in a bag as well, but having two on you is extremely important. The second reason, which I kind of already touched on, is speed. Having two cameras gives you a lot of options for the different types of shots you want to take, especially if you're shooting prime lenses. I love that I have two cameras on me and that at any moment I can quickly grab it, take the photos I need, and grab another camera and get a totally different look in a matter of just a couple of seconds. And while you can do that with zoom lenses, there's a lot of reasons why it's really not the best option. I think the two cameras is much better than just having one and having to zoom the whole time. And maybe I can try and do a test, but honestly, I think grabbing your next camera is a lot faster than having to zoom and then recompose your shot. There's been so many times on a wedding day where I'm just hanging out, not much is happening, and then all of a sudden something happens right beside me, and I know exactly which camera to grab, how quickly to get to it, and get the shot that I need. That's how I'm getting great parent reactions like these. And I don't think I'd be able to do it with just a zoom lens, standing back too far, without two cameras that I could quickly grab. The speed you gain for having two cameras, and especially wearing a double camera strap like I have, is just honestly one of the best things you can do as a wedding photographer. And the third reason you're going to want to use two cameras is the ability to use prime lenses quickly. We've already talked about having a backup and speed, but using prime lenses is a totally different world, and if you don't have two cameras, you're not going to be able to do it. Now, if you're not familiar, prime lenses are lenses that do not zoom, and the main advantage to them and what wedding photographers love about them is they have fast apertures. This means your aperture is going to let in a lot of light. On a zoom lens, you're looking at f2.8 most of the time on the lowest, whereas on prime lenses, I can get something like an f1.2 or even an f1.0. And since wedding photographers are always dealing with the reception when it's pretty much pitch black, having a lens where we know we're going to get the most light in possible is a must. Now, when you have these two prime lenses on, there's a whole technique of how you're going to have to handle your wedding day. And if you do not do that, you're going to have a hard time. Because that's probably the number one question that comes up is like, well, how do I use these non-zooming lenses and still get the shots I need? Most photographers are in the mindset that like, if they want to compose the shot, they need to zoom. And zoom lenses do have their place. They definitely are not a bad choice, but I love primes. And I love how I can use them and use them quickly, especially when I have two cameras. Let me actually show you real quick how I use my two cameras on a wedding day. But before I show you how I'm using my two cameras on a wedding day, let's not forget to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an online platform that will quickly help you build a website. And if you're looking to be a wedding photographer, having a website is very important at making your business look more legitimate and getting you away from just being a person with a camera. Squarespace has amazing built-in templates to help you build your website, but if you want something a little bit more custom, their tools for customizing your website is top notch. I recently upgraded my website and I absolutely love the way it looks, and it was super easy to do, and that's why I love Squarespace. On top of that, they have so many features built into the platform that any business can use. Scheduling, selling physical and digital products, member pages, content pages, analytics. You could go on forever. They have so many features that are extremely useful. So if you're looking to start yourself a website, definitely make sure to check out the link in the description below for 10% off of your first website or domain. Oh goodness, it is hot. I don't know why I chose to be out here. So this is generally the setup I'm using when I'm using two cameras on a wedding day. I have my Holdfast Gear Moneymaker. That's the double camera strap. I have the Sightseer, which is the bag on my back. And then I have my two cameras. Now, generally, if you're using two cameras, I would highly recommend using the exact same body. It's just cleaner. It's a much easier way to deal with the day. And again, if you run into issues where one of your cameras gives out on you, you have the literal same body, so you can just swap lenses. Now, I do sometimes shoot different bodies, and that's not a problem. If you are shooting different bodies, try to at least keep them in the same ecosystem. But again, that also doesn't even matter as much. So you may have seen that I like to use the GFX system. With that, I'm using the GFX 102 and also the GFX 100 RF. Now, the sensors and the quality coming out of these are the exact same, but the bodies and the lenses are a little different. So it's almost like using the same camera. Sometimes I also use my GFX 100 2 and also my X-T5. That's where it starts getting a little different. And this is why I say keep the same body types, because the GFX is a medium format camera. It shoots in 4x3. My X-T5 shoot in 3x2. So I have to I'll shoot the GFX in crop mode or like 35mm mode, just so I can match the photos. But again, you don't have to have the exact same bodies, but it just makes it easier. So I have two X-T5s here. Now, generally on a wedding day, I'm bringing 4 lenses, and this can vary. Recently, I actually started using only 3 lenses, but I'll talk about that later. But I have a 16mm here, a 23 on here, a 33 on this one, and I have a 50 in my bag back here. So I'm pretty much all set for the wedding day. And now that's all crop sensor lenses. Realistically, what that was a 24, a 35, a 50, and an 85. Now, while I'm working my wedding day, I basically designate each of my cameras as a type of camera. I have my wide lens camera. I usually will put this on my right side because it's gonna be the one that gets used the most. And then I have my tight lens camera, which will be on my left. It doesn't get used as much, but it's just as important. Now, by having these two camera bodies, I can essentially change lenses less depending on the part of the wedding day. So for instance, if it's getting ready, I'm only using a 35 and a 50. I'm not switching all the time, because that's one of the biggest questions I get. People are always like, oh, hey, why are you switching all day? You're not. You're picking different focal lengths for different parts of the wedding day that you know are gonna work. So then you're really only switching lenses during certain times. Now, switching lenses is pretty easy. Again, having two bodies, I'm not worrying so much about swapping every 50 seconds. So I have my 50 back here. Oh, I forgot to bring it. We'll just use the 16 since I forgot to pack my 50. But if I were switching lenses, I have my 16 here if I want to go wider. This is a 24. And I can just easily pop that on to this camera here. I'm usually just bringing the cap here, so I can swap the cap, put this in its place, and then I've made that change and I'm ready to shoot. But again, you're only changing when you know you need to, so you're not gonna run into sections where like something's happening and you're switching your lenses. Now, to talk a little bit more about this bag, another reason I bring it is because, again, I store my extra lenses there, which I forgot to pack my 50, but I also have space for flashes. This way, when something happens during the wedding day, I need to go quick, I can just pull it out my back there and shoot it. I also have my MagMod modifiers also. If you're curious about Flash, I have a really awesome course on it. Definitely make sure to check that out. So this is basically the setup on a wedding day for using two cameras. Now, the biggest thing you have to remember at this point is what focal lengths do I need for each section of the wedding day. So here's generally how I break down what focal lengths I'm using for different parts of the wedding day. And keep in mind, because I always get this question, yes, I'm a Fujifilm photographer, but I'm gonna be talking in full frame equivalents. So when I say a 35 millimeter, I mean a 35 mil. If you're on an APS-C or Fujifilm like me, just know that a 35 would be a 23 millimeter. So if you have any questions about that, let me know in the comments below. But here's how I use both of my focal lengths at different parts of the wedding day. So for your getting ready section of the wedding day, this is the start of the day. Everyone's getting dressed. You're generally in smaller locations, hotel rooms, bridal suites, groom suites, which are definitely the smallest. Most venues treat the grooms like trash, but that's a whole nother story. So because I'm in these smaller places, generally on my wide camera, I'm using a 35 mil, and on my tight camera, I'm using a 50 mil. Sometimes the spaces are even tighter than that, so I'm going with something like a 24 on my wide and a 50 on my tight. These focal lengths usually play well in this scenario, especially because, like I was talking about before, how I go between wide shots to start and then tight shots for my details. 50 millimeters okay when you're close because I'm trying to get detail shots anyway. And then a 24 or a 35 is going to give me the room I need when I'm in a small hotel room or something of that sort. For a first look, the most important thing is going to be the groom's reaction. Because of this, on my tight lens camera, I'm going to use an 85. This way I can get a nice tight shot right on his reaction, pretty much kind of like waist up. On my wide lens camera, I'll generally have on a 35 still. 35, in my opinion, is probably one of the best focal lengths for a wedding day for capturing things that are happening and things around them as well. You want to give context to the wedding day. So 35 is almost always on my wide camera lens. Now, during first looks, I'm generally taking portraits, and I actually take that 85 off and switch back to a 50. I personally don't really like the 85 millimeter portrait length. I know everyone's like, this is how you do portraits and you blow out the background. I don't like it. I don't know why I don't like it, but I'll use it occasionally to get like that one or two blown out backgrounds. But I found 35 and 50 for portraits is what I generally like. I shoot wide very often. A lot of times I'm switching that 35 to the 24 as well. Now for the ceremony, this is one of the sections where I'm actually going to switch my lens while it's happening. So obviously there's a bunch of different ways the ceremony can go, and some ceremony spaces are like tiny, but if your space is not tiny and it's a typical place, I'm starting out the ceremony with a 35 on my wide camera and a 50 on my tight camera. I'll either use the 35 or 50 as they're walking in, depending on how wide the space is. Sometimes I'm in a space where the ceremony area is huge, then I'll already have an 85 on, but generally I'm starting with 35 and 50. So then everybody comes in, I get everyone coming in, I get the bride coming in. The groom's reaction is done by my second photographer, and they're gonna have an 85 or longer on. This way they can get that shot. Again, whenever we're getting facial reactions, unless it's something you can be close to, you're shooting on an 85 or longer so that you can get a nice tight shot of that reaction. However, keep in mind to give your reaction space. Don't like zoom in like old 90s camcorder videos where they're just all up in the face. Like, give it some breathing room over the head and on the chest, but still a nice tight shot. Now, after everyone comes in, bride and groom are standing at the front. This is when I'll switch my 50 to an 85. This way, I'm not so close to the front of the altar or wherever they're getting married. I can give them a little bit of space, but I'm still fairly close. I can get nice tight shots of them putting the rings on, of the reactions during vows, and for the rest of the ceremony, I'm basically staying 35, 85. Now, after the kiss, a lot of times I do like a wider shot, so I'll switch to the 24 as well, kind of halfway through the ceremony. I like to take my first kiss shot on my 85, and then once they start walking back down, I'll shoot that on a 24. Now, shooting them walking back down the aisle on a 24, I'm pretty close to them, almost as close as I am right here to my camera recording this video. I'm getting genuine reactions as they're walking in, and I'll usually have them stop and kiss in the middle of the aisle, do a dip, something of that sort. And the 24 is great for that because you can see the guest more. If you're using something like a 35 or a 50, it's going to be too tight unless you stand at the back of the aisle. And there's something different about the shot with you being close to the couple rather than you being standing in the back. But again, argue about that approach in the comments below. The next major sections we have is going to lead into the speeches. For my speeches, again, we're focusing on reactions. So generally I have an 85 on my long camera, and on my wide camera, I still have that 35. For the speeches, I'm mainly using the 85 and getting those reactions. And then the 35, every now and then I'll take a wide shot so you can see the couple and also the speech giver. But generally I'm focused on the couple, I'm focused on the speech giver, and I'm waiting for reactions. And then last but not least is our reception. For reception, I switch my wide camera to a 24, and then my tight camera is going to stay a 50. Reception has a lot going on. You're going to want to use a wider lens most of the time. Like when it comes to first dances and stuff, you really can't be shooting with an 85. Leave that to your second photographer, because sometimes couples have like choreographed dances, or they're trying to do a dip, or they're trying to spin a lot. And if you're using a 50, you're missing that unless you're like standing in the back somewhere. But even that's hard because then you have guests and stuff in the way and the guest tables. So really, I would say stick with a 35 or 24 and just use that for the majority of the dance. If there's a time where they're not really moving a lot, or you have a couple that doesn't have a choreographed dance and they're not doing much, then okay, you can shoot your 50 a little bit more. But trust me, anytime I'm on my 50 and I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great, and then they do a dip and I'm like, ugh, and I miss half of it, I hate it every time. So first dances, try to be wider. And the rest of the reception is pretty much going to be like that as well. So I personally like to get out on the dance floor and I'm like there, in it, getting those photos. I don't like to stand out to the back. You can get some kind of cool photos by standing out to the back, but honestly, being in there is a much better look. This again, I'm shooting on a 24. And then for my sparkler exits, I generally want to shoot this on a 35 or a 50. Sometimes I'll shoot it on an 85, but I've come to find just the same way with first dances, couples are just running in too quickly that I can't get what I really want. So a 50 is a safer shot. If you can get close to the couple and get some nice blown out background with all those sparklers around, it's really nice. But a 35 or a 24 is going to help you get the group, and then a 50 is going to get that nice dreamy look to everything. Knowing which focal lengths you're going to be using during the wedding day is highly important if you're going to be shooting with 2 cameras and primes. And honestly, if you want to see it in action, check out my full wedding day videos here, where you can see me work a full wedding day and see me actually changing my lenses for these different sections that I just mentioned.